Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us all here today. We thank you for the talents of each participant. We thank you for the organizers. We pray for special blessings on everyone that has given their time, talent, and resources to make this event possible. We pray for strength and healing for all those diagnosed with HIV. We pray for wisdom for those working on a cure. Lord, do make us all instruments of your peace. Help us to remember your grace as we show love and compassion to all. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Roll. We'll now have the national anthem by Ms. Glenise Johnson, epidemiologist at the National AIDS Program.
Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland. March on to glory, your bright banners waving high. See how the world marks the manner of your bearing. Pledge to excel through love and unity. Pressing onward, march together to a common loftier goal. Steady sunward, though the weather hides the wide and treacherous shoal. Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland, till the road you've trod leads unto your God. March on, Bahamaland.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And now we will have welcome remarks from the Director of the National HIV/AIDS and Infectious Diseases Program for the Bahamas, Dr. Nikia Forbes.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. The Minister of Education and Technical and Vocational Training, the Honorable Glenys Hannah Martin, the PAHO WHO representative, Dr. Eldana Boisson, Mr. Julian Reed, and Mrs. Kayla Green-Smith, the co-chairs of the HIV/AIDS Resource Committee, distinguished members of the HIV/AIDS Resource Committee, esteemed judges, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a good afternoon. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the final round of the National HIV/AIDS Program's high school speech competition. It's an honor for us to welcome our competition finalists, their parents, relatives, and school administrators. We are especially honored to welcome our Minister of Education and Technical and Vocational Training and other senior government officials. We also greet our partners from the various non-governmental organizations and civil society, PAHO, the Bahamas AIDS Foundation, the DeMarco Foundation, CARE 242, staff, and friends of the National HIV/AIDS Program. We at the National HIV/AIDS Program have always supported the involvement of high school students in the commemorative activities of World AIDS Day. Our church service, the school assembly, and especially competitions like this one. For the past 2 months, students in New Providence, Grand Bahama, and the Family Islands have been warming up their rhetoric and honing their speaking skills for the first round of our speech competition. And we're delighted that 56 students presented their pre-recorded speeches in round 1 on the topic, should HIV testing be mandatory before marriage? This resulted in 15 finalists being selected from public and private schools. This competition has allowed students to express their opinions and voice on an issue that's been debated for many years. And we're grateful for the supportive energy demonstrated by the students with the collaboration of their parents, teachers, and for the final round of the competition. We eagerly look forward to more of their delivery and content as they address another relevant and important topic. Should the legal age to access of HIV testing and services be lowered to the age of 16 years? Once again, we say it is an honor to have our students, parents, school administrators, and distinguished guests here with us at the final and exciting round, and I wish you all a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Forbes. Well, to introduce our judges, we now have Hodari Prince of Queens College.
A pleasant good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to introduce our 5 judges to both the participants and our esteemed guests. We have firstly Miss Virginia Minnis, secondly Miss Barbara Dorset, next Dr. Elnathan Roll, Miss Kayla Greensmith, and finally Miss Linda Clark.
I don't know about you, but that sounds like a broadcaster's voice to me. Well, let's get on with the actual video speeches. They're going to be shown to us via video. But first, let me give you the names of the competition finalists. They are Lauren Scriven of Agape Christian School, Hodari Prince of Queens College, Christopher Stubbs of Bahamas Academy, Alicia Wilshcombe of SC Bootle High, Darvinette Hanna of C.I. Gibson High, Aaliyah Roll of St. Anne's School, Unique Kerr of C.V. Bethel Senior High, Andre Roll of St. Augustine's College, Kezia Johnson, I hope I said that correctly, of North Eleuthera High, Dante Butler of St. Augustine's College, Hannah Robinson of Queens College, J. Don Haley of St. Augustine's College, and Taisha Johnson of Windsor Preparatory School. Let's listen to those presentations.
Should the legal age of HIV testing be lowered to 16? Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Scriven, a 10th grader at Agape Christian School in Abaco. And today, I will be speaking on the topic, should the legal age of HIV testing be lowered to 16? When my mom was younger, her biggest plight was trying to find the missing wheel to her Barbie bicycle. And when I was growing up, I got upset when the furniture from my dollhouse would go missing. And now, my baby brother, at the age of 2 years old, loses his mind when his Wi-Fi drops and interrupts his dinosaur hunt song. Times have certainly changed. As much as it pains me to say this, the world is changing at a rapid pace, and not all of it is for our good. The days of no means no and because I said so are but distant memories. Parents and authority figures are now forced to give explanations to children, or some of them simply won't respond. This behavior has transcended into our social lives as well. Your so-called precious angels are now engaging in that 3-letter word so feared by most parents when it comes to their kids: sex. I could simply say if you're old enough to be having sex, then you're old enough to be getting tested for the diseases that come along with it, period. But because life isn't black and white and is rather a rainbow, I must dive deeper. See, I believe that to fully discuss my point of view on this topic, I need to begin at the very essence of it all, which I believe is love, and we receive our purest form from our families. Therefore, it is essential for the presence of love to reside boldly in our homes, as it is our guiding light to all the choices and decisions that we make. Sadly, we are experiencing a shortage in nuclear families. Having both parents in the home has now become a privilege, and the new normal seemingly is single-parent homes. While a handful of children can thrive in single-parent homes, children face real struggles because of this. One, in particular, is the challenges they face in regard to their sexuality. I find it quite disappointing how much of my peers just don't care about school, but rather spend most of their days discussing cute girls or boys and what their plans for the weekends are. Academic achievements are no longer popular or something that children subscribe to. They are more interested in social status. They are now engaging in adult activities at younger ages. They're smoking, drinking, and having sex. In an earlier time, some children may have waited until the age of 18 to engage in such acts. But now, age 16 and sometimes 15 seems to be the finish line for some kids. They are prematurely making life-changing and sometimes life-threatening decisions. So here's where my point comes. If you're engaging in sexual activity at the age of 16, why should HIV testing not be available to you? Think of it like a math equation. Unprotected engagement minus proper testing equals transmittance. Some may say, well, use protection and this won't be an issue. True. But how much of our children really take care and attention in anything they do? I'm sure some of you can't get them to make the bed properly. So why leave something as important as this up to kids? I believe if the blinders were removed from most adults and they knew the truth of what is going on in their homes with regard to their kids, they would fight harder for topics like this. But you know, most of us refuse to believe that our children would dare. But trust me when I say, they would, and they have. The naivety that our society claims to have when it comes to our kids is no longer cute. This country needs to wake up. Consider for a moment our death toll in this country. Or even closer, the amount of school fights with students using weapons. The value of human life has decreased. If the fight against violence is a losing battle, let's at least try to win the fight against this deadly virus called HIV. And we can take our first steps by providing testing to children from the age of 16. We need to normalize saying and learning about sex. For most children aged 16, this milestone comes with many significant meanings. The biggest being that they are almost officially adults. Parents, guardians, authority figures, please step down from your pedestals and meet your children where they are. Let's take a moment to acknowledge the recommendations and practices by our neighbors, the United States. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that routine HIV screenings begin as early as 15 years old for teens. They also add that the chance of contracting HIV increases significantly once a youth reaches 15 years old. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have reported that 44% of males and 42% of females aged 15 to 19 are reported to be having sexual intercourse, and this is only the reported cases. Most children keep that part of their life a secret from their parents, and sometimes even their doctors. So you must do the work. So you must take time out to listen and not condemn, to correct and not persecute. Education is the key, but that rule doesn't apply to just school. It applies to every aspect of one's life, even sex. How can you expect children to do better if they don't know better? Protection does not only come in the form of making children wear helmets and seatbelts. You must also provide them with protection from sexually transmitted diseases. And a very important way to do that is to screen your child for HIV annually. As I close, my message to the adults is, don't be afraid to have the talk with your children at an early age. Don't be afraid to discuss with them their sexual preferences and interests. If they are old enough to travel alone at 16 and get their driver's license, then they are old enough to have the responsible conversation about how to practice safe sex. So, let's normalize the testing, the conversation, and the education on the topic of HIV.
The Bahamas prides itself on being a Christian nation, and as a result of this, it is expected that the majority of citizens will wait until marriage to engage in sexual intercourse, and only for the means of procreation. However, expectations rarely meet reality. It is reported by the National Library of Medicine that approximately 35% of all students in the Bahamas aged 13 to 15 have engaged in some form of sexual relations with another person. Of those students, another 40% reported having not used any form of protection. Seeing as if such a substantial portion of the young people in our country are being actively engaged in unprotected sex, it would be outright foolish to not provide them with necessary testing facilities and services. Just because testing might not be available, that does not mean that young people will stop engaging in sexual activities. Furthermore, the legal age of consent for sexual activities in the Bahamas is 16 years old. How can we deny HIV testing to people who can legally have intercourse? It is for this reason that I firmly declare that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to the age of 16 in the Bahamas. According to the CDC, 1 in every 4 cases of HIV are contracted while the individual is young adult. These cases typically present as a cold or as a flu, and most people dismiss them as such. Then several years can pass, and while the person might not experience any symptoms, the virus is still multiplying rapidly throughout their body and spreading. 40% of sexually active young adults in the Bahamas reported having at least one or more partner in their lifetime. This is how HIV has risen to become such a problem in the Bahamas. Knowledge is power, and knowing that you have contracted a highly contagious and life-altering virus might hinder some young adults from engaging in sexual activities, or at the very least, it might convince them to use protection. As I stated previously, a large portion of the people who contract HIV are young adults, typically from the ages of 15 to 25. An important aspect that can be noted is that at such a young age, a person's brain is not completely developed and they are not yet fully matured. This can lead them to make poor decisions. For example, having sexual relations with multiple people at the same time or with large numbers of people. This can lead to the spreading of HIV on a massive scale. Getting tested early and diagnosed early on can be somewhat of a reality check or a wake-up call for some people and can lead them to make smarter sexual choices. The Center for Disease Control recommends that all individuals aged 13 to 64 should be tested for HIV at least once every year. HIV can be detected in a person's blood within the first month of contraction. Getting diagnosed early reduces morbidity and mortality rates because a person can start their treatment right away. Early diagnosis has such an important impact that only an estimated 2.6% of cases diagnosed early results in fatality, according to ncbi.gov. This can be compared to the 95% of cases that don't survive if the virus goes undiagnosed and untreated. Getting tested and diagnosed also drastically decreases the rate of transmission to others, as a person who knows that they are HIV positive can take measures to ensure the safety and health of their partner. The legal age of sexual consent has always been 16 in the Bahamas. In fact, according to the Tribune newspaper, our age of consent was inherited when the islands were colonized by Britain. My question to you is this: if the legal age for sexual consent in the Bahamas is 16, why should people of this age not also have the power to consent to testing that can save their life? It is a well-known fact that most parents in the Bahamas just do not sit down and have the much-needed conversations on sexual intercourse with their children. Sex is seen as a taboo topic because it is believed that if you talk to a child about these activities, that they will start to engage. It is important that we as a country start to acknowledge our youth and provide them with all the necessary facilities needed for them to be safe and healthy. And it is for this reason that I strongly and I passionately declare that the legal age of consent for HIV testing and services should be lowered to the age of 16 in the Bahamas. Thank you.
Sharon, you're pregnant. No, mama. Mama, I need to do a test. What test? Pregnancy? No, mama, HIV test. At your age, well, mother takes sick. Age ain't nothing but a number. Chi Ali. Should the legal age to access HIV testing and services be lowered to the age of 16 years old? Honorable judges, in the time of my grandparents, it was typical to practice celibacy, court each other, fall deeply in love, and then consummate their union. But in today's society, teens at an early age are being more promiscuous and involved in sexual behaviors before marriage. www.ageofconsent states, the age of consent for which an individual is considered legally old enough to participate in sexual activity is 16 years old. If the age of consent is 16, it's only prudent that the legal age to access HIV testing and services be lowered to the age of 16. You can't recycle wasted time. Waiting until the age of 18, the virus will become more severe, having a detrimental effect on your health. Treatment is vital. Therefore, the sooner the better. The Oxford Dictionary defines legal as permitted by law, access, a way of approach or passage, and lowered, become less in amount. Let's take a look at teenage pregnancy. Due to less use of contraceptives, the teenage pregnancy rate worldwide has climbed Mount Everest. Studies from the World Health Organization shows each year an estimation of 21 million females aged 15 through 19 in developing regions become pregnant, and approximately 12 million of them give birth. As a result, there is more abortion and children raising minors. You may think, how is teenage pregnancy related to the legal age to access testing? There is evidence in news reports and papers that older men are raping and having sex with young girls, along with young females being forced into the sex trade, starting at age 13. OJP.gov. With 13 to 16 years being victims of sex trafficking, rape, and pregnancy, how will they know if they're HIV positive or not without a test? Is it fair to them? BahamasLocal.com states, in the Bahamas, about 700 teenage girls are pregnant each year. 20% get pregnant again, and 14 to 15 years being the dominant group, with the youngest being 9 years old. Legal access for 16-year-olds to do the HIV test would be a good measure for the policy makers to legislate and institutions to contain the spread of HIV in the country. If a young teen is living with HIV unknowingly, it can put the family at risk, because HIV can not only be contracted sexually, but from blood exchange and cuts and sores as well. It can also be transmitted to certain bodily fluids that are capable of containing high concentrations of the virus, such as blood, semen, breast milk, rectal secretions, and vaginal secretions. It can also be transmitted through tattoos and piercings, according to healthline.com, stating it's technically possible for transmission to occur if equipment or ink is reused or shared. On the other hand, there is no need to be afraid of having casual contact with someone who is living with HIV. The virus does not live on the skin, but we must understand the urgency and the importance of lowering the legal age to accessing testing at 16 years old. This is not a matter of debate or to become confused. It is simply logical. We are trying to stop the spread of this wildfire, not increase its intensity. What does age have to do with it? What does age have to do with it? Honorable judges,
Honorable judges, distinguished guests, fellow contestants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As scores of conflicting point of views skyrocket, I approach this most controversial topic by simply saying, if a 16-year-old teenager in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas can legally give consent to the involvement of sexual activities by law, shouldn't they also be held legally responsible at age 16 to assess HIV testing and medical services which relates to their sexual health and well-being? While some may argue that assessing medical testing and services for adolescents is solely the responsibility of parents or guardians, I agree with this statement, but to a certain extent. In fact, it has been proven that in many cases, parents and guardians are completely oblivious to their teenagers' reckless behavior and are completely unaware of their involvement in sexual activity. During adolescence, individuals undergo significant physical and emotional changes which result in many risky behaviors such as experimenting with drugs, alcohol, and unsafe sexual behaviors. I sincerely believe if teenagers are empowered with the legal right to assess testing at an earlier age, it will decrease the rate of HIV infection, as well as lower the spread of infection, especially among adolescents. In our culture, even though religious belief depicts sexual intercourse as an exclusive act between married couples, realistically, this is certainly not the case in our society. It is proven that an increasing number of adolescents are irresponsibly experimenting with their sexuality at an earlier age. As a matter of fact, the United Nations General Assembly states that persons between the age of 15 and 24 account for more than 1/3 of all new HIV infections, and 2/3 of all new diagnoses are among young males between the ages of 13 and 34. This fact is extremely alarming and is a major cause for concern, as adolescents are among the group which account for 16% of the world population and are literally considered one of the highest risk groups for contracting HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. Another mind-boggling fact, according to the CDC website, is around 44% of young people with HIV are completely unaware that they are infected with the virus and can be transmitted to others. Imagine the trauma of contracting HIV after having unprotected sexual contact, assuming that you are both healthy because neither one of you has ever been sexually involved with another person, but only to discover that he or she is an asymptomatic carrier who unknowingly contracted the HIV virus at birth and was never told by family members in an attempt to protect the family from the stigma and discrimination of having HIV. In this generation, the probability of this scenario is very real, and absolutely no one should have to be faced with such a horrifying situation. Empowerment of knowledge and early access to widespread HIV testing and services among younger adolescents is by far the greatest weapon of survival in the fight against HIV prevention, the spread of infection, as well as the treatment of infected individuals. It is my belief that empowering teenagers with the ability to legally assess HIV testing at an earlier age will eliminate many barriers associated with the stigma and discrimination among adolescents seeking HIV testing and services. Some of the major factors that prevent adolescents from seeking HIV testing and services while engaging in risky sexual behaviors are 1. The concerns of breach of confidentiality, 2. The fear of having to approach parents for consent to receive HIV testing, and 3. The interrogation process from parents becoming aware of their relationships and sexual behavior. Hats off and congratulations to all parents who have successfully developed relationships with their teenagers, whereas they feel comfortable discussing matters relating to sexuality with them. In most cases, this topic is taboo among parents and adolescents, even though this does not exclude the fact that they are actively involved in such behavior. In conclusion, my question is, why shouldn't teenagers who are legally able to give consent to sexual activity not be allowed to freely access HIV testing and services? This legal action will inevitably increase the rate of HIV infection and transmission, especially among the younger generation, and ultimately many lives can be saved in the fight against the HIV epidemic. Honorable judges, distinguished guests, fellow contestants, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude my take on this most controversial topic by saying anyone who can legally give consent to have sexual intercourse at age 16 in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas should legally be held responsible for the consequences of their actions. Therefore, my answer to this question is an astounding yes. The legal age to assess HIV testing and services should be lowered to 16 in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you, and once again, a pleasant afternoon to all.
Girl, my ex just called me. No, not that one. I mean James. Yeah, he just called me and said I should go get tested because he had HIV. What you mean go get tested? You mustn't want mommy to kill me. My parents don't even know I have sex, and I can't get any HIV services without their consent. I don't know why, because I'm 16 years old and I did not need their consent to do the do. So why do I need to drag them into this? Besides, I gotta go tell my current boyfriend that he has to get tested too. No, I have to tell him, because if I don't, I risk him getting sick as well. Either my boyfriend and I suffer, or I get tested and have mommy find out. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I gotta figure out something really quick, because I know early detection and knowing my status is the best way to protect my health and others. Judges, this is just a mere demonstration of what so many adolescents experience, all to find out that the laws concerning this aspect of their lives are antiquated, contradictory, and debilitating. I strongly believe that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to 16 years old because it is evident that many teenagers are sexually active or are exposed to HIV in other ways. Teenagers can legally have consensual sex at the age of 16. They will also have access to early treatment, and finally, it can aid in the decrease of the stigma of this disease. Firstly, teenagers are having unprotected sex without parental consent in the Bahamas. As much as we want to bury our heads in the sand and play the ostrich, teen sex is very prevalent in the Bahamas. Almost every Netflix show, music video, and even video games expose teens to sex. When this plays out into reality, the unfathomable for some parents will occur. According to PaceBahamas.com, over 700 teen girls become pregnant each year. If over 700 teen girls are becoming pregnant yearly, that in my young mind is 700 teens along with their partners at risk of contracting HIV. While I do not believe in sex outside of marriage or teens engaging in sex, I do believe that 16-year-olds should be given the right to access HIV testing and services without parental consent because early diagnosis leads to early treatment. In the second instance, the laws of the Bahamas are both antiquated and contradictory. They state that the age of consent for sex in the Bahamas is 16 years old. Furthermore, the law of the Bahamas says that children under the age of 18 cannot access medical care without a consenting adult. My question is, if teens are given the right to become sexually active at 16 years old, shouldn't they also have the right to give consent to HIV testing without their parents' consent? The fear of their parents' death threats and being abandoned alone are enough for teens to continuously engage in sex without their parents' knowledge. This fear leads to teens having to wait a whole 2 years before they can legally access HIV testing and services. Imagine the burden and the risk placed on this adolescent because of fear. Are we willing to continue to take on this risk? We know that HIV is not a death sentence, but Elizabeth Taylor states it best when she says it is bad enough that people are dying of HIV, but no one should die of ignorance. According to the CDC in the United States, 21% of new HIV diagnoses in 2019 were among people aged 13 to 24 years old. This proves that not only adults contract the virus, and it is quite prevalent in adolescents. Since this is the case in our country as well, It is only right to allow minors as young as 16 years old to receive HIV testing and services without parental consent. This will allow consenting teens to access HIV testing and services that are crucial. As long as the age of consent for sex remains at 16 years old, then the Constitution should make provisions for these 16-year-olds to access this HIV testing and services. Why in the world should parents have to determine the health care of a teenager who is legally at the age to give consent for sex? Opposers of this view may say some of these statistics reflect data from the U.S., but it is said when America sneezes, the Bahamas catches the flu. UNAIDS.com shares the same beliefs as I do, stating that many countries have laws that prevent adolescents from accessing essential health services without the consent of a parent or guardian. The original intention may have been to protect minors, but these stipulations often have the opposite effect and increase the risk of HIV and other health problems among adolescents. Thirdly, because of the stigma placed on HIV and AIDS, 16-year-olds should have access to HIV testing and services to decrease the stigma. By lowering the age for consent to access these services, teens will be more open to the idea and bring awareness to this vexing problem. Youth makes us feel invincible, and let's face it, adolescents often make mistakes and participate in activities that make them more prone to contracting the virus. Imagine that if testing was a norm and available without parental consent, teens would not be afraid to test, be more concerned about their choices, and HIV/AIDS would not be such dirty words. These teens will grow up into adults who are more likely to ask their partners about their status and be concerned about theirs as well. Knowledgeable teens become knowledgeable adults. In conclusion, it is fairly obvious that many teenagers engage in sexual activity and are exposed to HIV in other ways. I firmly believe that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to 16 years old in order to allow more early diagnosis, prompt treatment, and the removal of the stigma associated with this illness. Dustin Hoffman once said, "We need to band together as a unit every day, especially to conquer the strength of the AIDS virus. In order to see a better tomorrow for our country, many laws need to be altered. The idea of not decreasing the age of consent to HIV testing and services without parental knowledge to the age of 16 is absolutely absurd. This law should be taken into immediate consideration before we see the crippling effect on our nation. I ask you, should our laws continue to allow our children to live in fear or to be blissfully ignorant and continuously repeat the cycle? Or will we give the next generation a voice and arm them with knowledge and power that can create real change? I have made clear my position. You decide, judges."
Students, can you imagine being told by your best friend that he or she tested positive for HIV? How do you feel? Judges, how would you feel if that was your child who tested positive? As much as we like to place sexual health and education on the back burner, the truth is many teenagers are engaging in sexual activity. According to the CDC, about 1 in 4 persons ages 13 to 24 have contracted HIV. Every time a person engages in unprotected sex, they place themselves at risk of contracting HIV, and this notion does not change when discussing children who also engage in sexual activity. For as long as we can remember, the legal age to get tested for HIV has been 18 years old. However, I would advance the argument of lowering the age to 16. There are a variety of reasons as to why the legal age should be lowered. It will aid in the early detection of HIV to prevent the development of AIDS. It will prompt for better sexual education. And lastly, it will foster a sense of maturity and responsibility amongst us teens. Firstly, lowering the age of HIV testing and services will aid in the early detection of HIV, preventing the development of AIDS. AIDS is a very debilitating syndrome. Recurring fevers, unexplained tiredness, diarrhea, pneumonia. These are the symptoms you can be facing for the rest of your life if you don't treat HIV immediately. And in order to treat HIV immediately, you must take the first step: get tested. The truth is, teenagers are just as exposed to contracting the virus as adults, and in order to prevent your little one from experiencing such thing, you must prioritize their sexual health. It is imperative for teenagers to know their HIV status, so you, as the parent, can take the preventative or remedial measures to protect their health. If your child does have the virus, early detection will aid in early prevention, and your child will be placed on antiretroviral medication to reduce the symptoms. Early detection of HIV in teenagers will also aid in developing a new approach to future family planning, which will ensure the health and well-being of your future grandchildren. Secondly, allowing 16-year-olds access to HIV testing and services prompts for better sexual education. The current state of the sexual education being offered in secondary schools leaves much to be desired, and the current teen pregnancy rate is indicative of the abstinence-centered method of education being ineffective. According to the Ministry of Health, approximately 500 preteens and teenagers are pregnant annually in the Bahamas. By lowering the age, more teenagers will be able to get tested, and the statistics will finally reveal a more accurate representation of those who have contracted HIV. Maybe through these statistics, parents will finally be convinced to fully concern themselves with their teens' potential sex lives and concerns. The Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health can synergize to curate a plan that will alleviate the current state of sexual education being taught in schools. We cannot just ignore the sexual lives of teens. Such thing will exist whether we want to acknowledge it or not. By not allowing 16-year-olds access to HIV testing and services, we are excluding and neglecting their sexual needs and concerns, which will greatly impact them in the long run. Lastly, the legal age to HIV testing and services should be lowered to 16 because it fosters a sense of responsibility amongst teens. As we teens depart from our childhood stage and embark on the journey of young adulthood, we must be responsible and mature enough to address our sexual health concerns. And even though not all of us are sexually active, those of us who are should certainly prioritize their health and have the freedom to get tested. Teenagers who have sexual shame will eventually grow into adults who also have sexual shame. How are we supposed to muster up the courage to get tested if you couldn't overcome such a thing at 16 years old? If 16-year-olds have the right to consent to sex, we should have the right to get tested for HIV. We are supposedly mature enough to consent to sex, but we are not mature enough to access the services offered for the possible consequences of having sex? This is nonsense. In order to flourish into healthy and mature young adults, we must start with the prioritization of sexual health as teens. To conclude, access to HIV testing and services are a right that us 16-year-olds should have. If we have the right to consent to sex, we should have the freedom to prioritize our sexual health and get tested. The age should simply be lowered because it will aid in the early detection of HIV to prevent the development of AIDS. It will prompt for better sexual education, and lastly, it will foster a sense of maturity amongst us teens. Thank you.
Good morning, esteemed judges and viewers. HIV is a disease which I am sure nobody wishes to ever get nor spread. Thus, a great way to help combat the spread is to test. In fact, as per the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, testing is critical to linking people to treatments which can help them live long and healthy lives, even with HIV. However, the ability to test is nothing without access to the service, and unfortunately, for those under 18, this is currently unavailable in the Bahamas. Why is this the case? Why, in a nation with an age of consent being 16 years, is access to assist in the identification and treatment with one of the most grave and long-lasting sexually transmitted infections not available for them? Considering this, I can affirm that indeed the age of HIV testing and services should be lowered to the age of 16. Firstly, the presence of sexually active teenagers means that we have a moral imperative to help protect them from STIs. Secondly, lowering the age of 16 will help reduce the stigma of HIV/AIDS amongst the wider public. Finally, doing so will better educate them about the risk of sexual activity, thus helping to reduce HIV statistics as a whole. Although it is a hushed reality, there are sexually active people in our country who are aged 16 and 17. Even though sex is often seen as simply a higher level of personal enjoyment by many of us young people, with Anna Martinez at the United Kingdom's Sex Education Forum stating that there's a lot of ignorance amongst young people about sex. This ignorance can then lead them into risky sexual decisions, which can unfortunately end in HIV transmission. It is therefore no wonder that people between the ages of 15 and 24 years make up 2 of every 7 new HIV infections as of 2021, according to UNAIDS.org. This is truly a tragic figure, and one which can be dealt with. While young people might not necessarily know fully about sex and its risks, many still take the plunge into the unknown. Despite the fact that this may be questionable decision-making, that does not mean as a society we have to leave them to suffer. Genesis 4:9 asks the question, am I my brother's keeper? The answer is a resounding yes. Even when we do things that might not be wholly wise, such as engaging in risky sexual activity, it is our moral duty as a society to help if there is an issue. However, the Bahamas' current legal arrangement of only making HIV-related services available to those who are 18 or older is leaving a woeful 2-year hole in healthcare's moral obligation to those who need it. Healthline.com states that within this 2-year time frame between potential infection and being able to access testing, HIV can pass through the acute phase, where treatment is most effective, and enter the latent phase, the most dangerous phase, where people might be unaware of their status, with the virus wrecking their immune system and potentially spreading to others. Just picture that. An awful thought indeed, and even worse is that legally, such young people can be left to languish for this long in silent suffering. Therefore, healthcare is a basic necessity for humanity, whether it is a simple fever medication or an HIV treatment plan. And by depriving 16 and 17-year-olds in our country from this basic necessity is both a dereliction of duty and a gross injustice. We cannot, in any good conscience as a country, deprive our youth of this vital service, which can literally mean the difference between life and death. To add on, there is the unpleasant fact that HIV is unfortunately a heavily stigmatized disease. One of these socially toxic associations is that HIV is a just punishment for a person's poor choices, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Especially in a Christian nation like the Bahamas, which frowns upon premarital sex, particularly in the youth, HIV comes under heavy scrutiny. This stigma prevents people from seeking treatment if they have the condition. Alas, this can leave young people feeling ashamed of themselves and helpless, as they could have HIV and be denied the life-saving intervention required to help them. Likewise, our legal system not permitting those under 18 to receive HIV services indirectly perpetuates the stigma against HIV. By effectively shunning those who are 16 and 17 years old from HIV services, the government of the Bahamas is complicit in the criticism and rejection of older teenagers with HIV. This is truly unfortunate, only adding discomfort to an already sensitive issue. Joseph Silbrand had once said that the most fundamental purpose of government is defense, which includes defense of the stigmatized and the vulnerable. Therefore, how can we be defending who we are hurting at the same time? Although governments cannot micromanage the everyday interactions and relationships between its citizens, a major way they can impact society is through the passage of laws. Laws such as reducing the age of HIV testing and services to age 16 would finally prove to the marginalized youth who may battle HIV that the government does care and is trying to improve the situation. Plus, over time, the public opinion of older teenagers and those currently out of the scope of legal HIV services would change for the better. Eventually, people will become more compassionate and destigmatized, promoting an environment of love and support, which teenagers with the condition desperately need. Finally, educating the youth of our country about HIV is absolutely necessary as an HIV service. Alan Bloom once stated that education is the movement from darkness to light, and the same could not be more true for HIV. As stated earlier, most of us young people are in the dark about HIV and sex, and this lack of knowledge about HIV and conditions like it pose a real threat to our health. Thus, it only seems plausible if HIV education was widely introduced into behavior education and public awareness campaigns that people will begin to more deeply ponder the risks before going into unprotected sex. The age of 16 is much more impactful than the age of 18, partly because it would act in line with the Bahamian national age of consent. Thus, young people would be equipped with both the knowledge of HIV and other STDs if they choose to utilize their legal freedom and are thus more likely to avoid them. In conclusion, HIV services need to be available from the age of 16 because of our moral imperative to give help to those who need it, to help break the stigma associated with the disease, and our need to educate people to help prevent HIV infection. Doing so will help open up opportunity for care for many Bahamians who urgently need it, and will make a difference in the lives of HIV victims so that they can live lives as long and as healthy as possible.
A disease that was widely known as the gay-related immune deficiency tormented and swept our world with devastating misery during the 1981 epidemic. According to the World Health Organization, this disease, now referred to as HIV, continues to claim the lives of thousands of people worldwide each year. The term legal age refers to the age at which a person legally acquires a particular right or obligation independently. In the Bahamas, currently, the legal age to get tested for HIV is 18 years old, at least according to the Hospitals and Healthcare General Regulations. It states that no treatment nor procedure shall be performed without the voluntary, competent, and informed consent of the patient, and where the patient is a minor, the informed consent of a parent or guardian. With that knowledge, illustrious judges, special guests, and esteemed competitors, should the legal age to HIV testing and services be lowered from its current 18 to the proposed 16? A pleasant good afternoon. I firmly believe that the legal age to access the crucial HIV testing and services must be lowered. Not only is it recommended by the World Health Organization, but adolescents at the age of 16 have the relevant mental faculties to provide informed consent. Therefore, shouldn't they be equipped with the ability to prevent one of the most prominent, deadly, sexually transmitted diseases worldwide? The first reason I agree with this proposal is adolescents 16 and older should be able to take control and have free reign of their reproductive and sexual care. Why? Why should adolescents be able to take this initiative when for eons parents possess jurisdiction in this area? Law on Human Behaviors, Adolescents' Cognitive Capacity Study states, the ability of an individual to reason and consider alternative courses of action undergirded by executive functions reaches adult levels during the mid-teen years. This cognitive capacity is the cognitive maturity needed to make informed consent. Cited from the Oxford Language Dictionary, informed consent is permission granted in full knowledge of the possible consequences. Typically that which is given by a patient
to a doctor for treatment with the knowledge of the possible risks and benefits. With that being said, adolescents, in this particular case, 16-year-olds, are able to make cognitively mature, informed consent. Secondly, preventative care is better than curative care. According to a press conference on September 2nd, 2022, Dr. Nakia Forbes, director of the National HIV, AIDS, and Infectious Diseases Units, stated that there were 4,447 known cases of HIV in the Bahamas at the end of 2021. In addition, according to the ministry's Family Planning Overview, the adolescent pregnancy rate in the Bahamas is twice as high as USA's and thrice as high as Canada's. This statistic shows that there are numerous adolescents in the Bahamas engaging in sexual intercourse. Therefore, they are at higher risk for contracting HIV. In this regard, they should be able to be tested along their own merit. The overview also stated that there is a lack of specifically targeted education in this area. Hence, I believe that in addition to access the relevant HIV testing and services, adolescents should be better educated on as it relates to HIV. The WHO recognizes that the need for parental consent may and will deter adolescents in need of HIV testing from getting tested. A statement made by the Scientific Committee of Oceanic Research asserted that by identifying potential health issues at an early stage, it is easier to manage or postpone the onset of conditions and prevent them from occurring. Also, lives and money can be saved by reducing the need for costly hospital intervention, which is more likely to happen when HIV is detected in its later stages. Therefore, being tested independently at a much younger age could allow for earlier positives and earlier treatment, prevention over cure. Thirdly, the WHO advises that the age adolescents are able to access independent HIV testing be lowered to 16. The WHO performed a study in sub-Saharan Africa on consent laws and adolescent HIV testing. The objective of this study was to estimate the association between legal age of consent and coverage of HIV testing among adolescents. The results of this study show, quote, parental consent requirements may deter young people from accessing important sexual and reproductive health care services. In addition, they discovered barriers that negatively impact adolescents being willing to get tested for HIV. These barriers include anticipated negative family reaction to needing testing, fear of positive diagnosis, and especially a fear of discrimination. Considering these barriers already exist, why add something else to deter young adults from what could be life-saving care? Therefore, considering that the Bahamas acknowledges the credibility and implements the advice of the WHO on most health-related issues, why not this? Let's lower the legal age for independent HIV testing in the Bahamas. As the WHO clearly state in their study, healthy parental involvement and communication have been proven to have a positive effect on youth decision-making around sexual and reproductive health. However, there is little evidence to even suggest that parental consent fosters healthy parental involvement. This study has also proven that a lower legal age to independent HIV testing is associated with higher testing rate among teens. Giving adolescents this coveted control can also empower the youth of our society to take responsibility for their own actions, leading to a more positive and understanding parent-child dynamic. According to the United Nations Children Fund, more commonly known as UNICEF, in 2021, about 1.7 million adolescents between the ages of 10 through 19 were living with HIV worldwide. Adolescents, teenagers, and children everywhere are plagued with this life-changing condition. Some may say that 16-year-olds still aren't responsible enough to seek out these services and treatments for themselves. But I disagree with that opinion, and I'm certain that the legal age to access these services should be lowered. I strongly believe that 16-year-olds possess the necessary psychological maturity to provide informed consent. I believe preventative care is better than cure, and even the WHO recommends it be lowered. In areas pertaining to HIV prevention, the agreed upon consensus is voluntary testing among the people of a population. Lowering the legal age for independent testing can be the gateway to eradicating HIV in the Bahamas. Giving our youth the ability to prevent such a harmful disease is an essential step in the future of the Bahamas. Our youth are our future, and we should be doing all we can to keep them from the cold hands of a preventative disease.
Stricken by poverty and a victim of her circumstances, Arya was forced to fight for survival each day, trotting through the treacherous streets of Nassau in a quest to be academically fulfilled, ended the day she met her fate. Arya found herself in a physical and mental battle after being violently sexually assaulted by the hands of a fellow student, the debonair Felix Ferguson. Automatically, she knew that she was exposed because he had a track record of committing promiscuous and immoral acts with boys and girls of the school. He could not take no for an answer. Too ashamed to speak about how Felix violated her innocence, she was torn apart inside. She went to get a test, but soon discovered that she was not able to get one without the consent of an adult. She refused to do this because she was scared and felt disgusted. 2 years later, after her untimely death, her parents were horrified to find out that she passed away from a 3-lettered acronym, HIV. Noble judges, my fellow opponents, audience, a pleasant good afternoon. The story of Arya, though sad and forlorn, depicts a harsh reality of what people face today. While many may not be rape victims, they are engaging in sexual activity on a daily basis. The horrifying human immunodeficiency virus has found smart ways to reach and affect our society. Reported by the Nassau Guardian on September 2nd, 2022, as officials revealed a 53% decrease in the HIV cases in the Bahamas between 2010 and 2019. Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Michael Darville, said that the HIV/AIDS epidemic is nearing its conclusion. I fervently believe that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to the age of 16 because an early death does not have to occur. It allows the affected population to be controlled and monitored, and prevention is definitely better than cure. Firstly, there's a famous saying that goes, "A useless life is an early death." It is no secret that teenagers at the age of 16 and under partake in intercourse. However, most of them are affected with the virus around this time. Youth aged 13 to 24 account for almost 26% of all new HIV infections. If the legal age was lowered, youths will be able to know their status and take necessary precautions. Many of them are afraid of the consequences and the image they will portray which is why they stay quiet and allow matters to spiral out of control. With an individual's status being known, they can receive available treatments and measures to allow them to live a healthy, normal life. Youths living with HIV are also less likely to remain in care. The absence of care can eventually lead to death. And honestly, the last thing we need is to have any more young individuals die. They are our future. Secondly, knowing one's HIV status is critical for health and control. The National HIV/AIDS Center's Acting Manager Director, Beverly Boyd, said, "One of our priorities is counseling and testing. We need persons to know their status. In knowing their status, our priority is to stop HIV." Ms. Boyd emphasized that by obtaining tests and counseling, individuals are able to make better health decisions. Let's take, for instance, victims of rape. Almost every day, there's a reported case of a young girl or boy being a victim of rape. Can you imagine the agony they experience, not only physically but mentally? Can you envision the emotional distress they go through? It is certainly not an easy task. Like Arya, many victims have issues confiding. As a result, they feel guilty, anxious, depressed, suicidal, and much more. Most commonly, they feel ashamed to notify someone. According to the Public Medical Center, an estimated 44% of the HIV-infected youths are unaware of their status. Testing is the initial step towards determining one's status and gaining access to treatment. In a case where testing was legal for teens at a young age, youths in these situations will receive access to health care. This would allow for more record keeping and more recent and accurate reporting. Testing, especially from a young age, allows the virus to become manageable, and the spread will definitely be reduced here in our country. Furthermore, a clever individual solves a problem, but a wise one prevents it. Prevention is certainly better than cure. A study was conducted in the year 2013 in sub-Saharan Africa. Although the HIV load is greatest among teenagers in the country, access to testing, a critical first step in prevention and treatment, remains limited. Policies requiring parental approval for minors to undergo HIV testing services prevent this. Nonetheless, they still aim to eradicate the virus by the year 2025. How can this be accomplished with rules such as this? In my opinion, the Bahamas should not be like Sub-Saharan. We should implement what is right and what's beneficial. Another example could be in a case where a pregnant teenager contracts the virus. She can be put on a treatment plan to stop her child from contracting the virus. When we make the legal age 16, there's an extremely high possibility we can reach the minimum viral load, which is the point where the infected prevent themselves from transmitting to others. In conclusion, we must find proactive approaches to control this virus, not only in the Bahamas, but the world at large. One of the ways this can be made possible is if we make HIV testing permissible at the age of 16 or even younger. Other ways can include spreading awareness, allow mandatory premarital testing, and greatest of all, allow individuals of age 16 or younger to take at-home tests. We have not found a cure for this virus as yet. Therefore, in the meantime, we should take the bull by the horn and take action now. Thank you.
You are 16, going on 17, innocent as a rose. Some that you meet may have HIV, but how will you ever know? You are 16, going on 17, able consent to give, but only for sex, and not for the test that may help you not die, but live. Judges, fellow orators, Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Should the legal age to access HIV testing and services be lowered to the age of 16? Consider this. According to the Minors Act of 1976 and the Sexual Offences Act 1991, the legal age for both males and females in the Bahamas is 18 years old. Based on this law, children under the age of 18 must have consent from a parent or guardian to receive medical treatment. If a person under 18 signs a contract, the Infant Relief Act 1887 renders that contract void. Based on these statute laws, 16-year-olds cannot access or sign consent for HIV testing or services. But this same act does give 16-year-olds some power. Another reading of the Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Act reveals that a person who is 16 years of age can give sexual consent. Do you notice any inconsistencies? At 16, teens can have sex under law without parental consent. But if a medical condition arises, the same law says, no, you're not old enough. Call a parent. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to correct this inconsistency. The question is, do we make the law consistent by raising the age of sexual consent to 18 or by lowering the age to access HIV testing to 16? A decision to lower the age to access this seems wise when we consider the following. A Tribune News article published March 16, 2021 declares the elephant in the room. Bahamian students having sex at school at all levels. The Ministry of Health and Wellness Family Planning page notes that the teenage birth rate beginning at 15 years is twice as high as that of the United States, 3 times as high as that of Canada, and 11 times higher than that of the Netherlands. It goes on to note that the high rate of sexual active teenagers, the rising number of teens with multiple pregnancies, the lack of comprehensive, specifically targeted education, coupled with limited access to contraceptive information and services, all form barriers to good reproductive health. Yes, our young people are sexually active. Exactly how many and how often? The World Health Organization shared that globally 1,750,000 adolescents were living with HIV. But here in the Bahamas, the WHO Sexual and Reproductive Health Snapshot in 2021 revealed no data reported for the number of newly infected teenagers, no data given for the number of teenagers living with HIV, no data revealed for the number of AIDS-related deaths, no data. No data for the WHO, and no data for the sexually active teenagers legally capable of giving sexual consent in our little country. Lowering the age that they can have access to HIV testing and services will ensure that there is data they do have, their own status and that of their partners. This would arm them with more than just sexual consent, but the ability to use that consent wisely. Increasing the age of consent to 18 would usher in an underground sexual community, unmonitored and unsafe. Lowering the age would enlighten these teenagers living in uncertainty and empower them to make healthy sexual choices. Some are 16, going on 17, eager to go explore, never imagining they'd be contracting HIV, AIDS, or more. For those that are 16, going on 17, give them a fighting chance. Make laws consistent. Don't be resistant. Put their lives in their hands.
The age for sexual freedom is a very controversial topic. There is no universal answer as to when a young person should have freedom to make his or her own sexual decisions. The age of consent varies by country. In the Bahamas, it is 16. is the age when a person is legally old enough to consent to engage in sexual activity. However, under the Minors Act of 1976, the age of majority, when a person is legally considered an adult, is 18. This presents serious challenges for testing and treating HIV, as anyone under the age of 18 cannot access HIV testing and services without the consent of a parent or guardian. This begs only one question. Should the legal age to access HIV testing and services be lowered to the age of 16? It absolutely needs to be, as it will reduce the rate of HIV infections in the Bahamas, remove a major obstacle for testing and treating those between the ages of 16 and 18, and ultimately save lives. To begin, the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be reduced to 16 because it will lower the rate of HIV infection in the Bahamas, as young people are greatly affected by the disease. According to the Bahamas 2017 HIV surveillance report, 18% of new cases in the Bahamas were people between the ages of 15 and 24. The next age group, people ages 20 to 29, accounted for only 16% of new infections. In fact, the 15 and 24 age group was surpassed only by the 30 to 39 age group, which accounted for 28% of new cases. It is evident that the 15 to 24 age group, which includes teenagers younger than 18, is at risk of contracting and spreading HIV. On the other hand, it can be said that a teenager has access to HIV testing and treatment like anyone else, and that's true. However, currently, that is only possible for those under 18 with the consent of a parent or a guardian. Which teenager is going to ask their parent to authorize an HIV test for them? Most would rather not. And if they are sexually active, they could be carrying HIV and transmitting it to others. This can be even more dangerous if the HIV infection is asymptomatic, as the carrier can unknowingly infect more people for a longer period. If left untreated, the HIV infection can develop into AIDS, and this can eventually lead to death. Another reason why the age should be lowered to 16 is because of the nature of the laws in the Bahamas. Here, the legal age of majority being 18, compared to the younger age of consent for sexual activity of 16, creates some roadblocks regarding access to HIV testing and treatment. Lawmakers in the Bahamas must address this by lowering the legal age to access HIV testing and treatment to 16, the age of consent for sexual intercourse. The age of consent of 16 is not unique to the Bahamas. In fact, major industrialized countries like the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom also have an age of consent of 16. However, if the law allows a 16-year-old to consent to sexual intercourse, it should naturally give that 16-year-old the legal right to consent to HIV testing and treatment to protect themselves. The current laws, which could deter those between 16 and 18 years old from seeking treatment, may result in a myriad of undesired outcomes. Now, think about this. An impoverished teenage girl, age 16, needs money for her family and meets a man at the age of 40 who tells her he can help. However, he has one condition. She must have sex with him. The teenager, desperately in need of money, agrees. However, in the process, she contracts HIV. 2 years later, she can finally go and get a test on her own, only to find she does not only have HIV, but also has AIDS. Now keep in mind that she and her family are very poor, so they've been sharing razors for leg trims and facial haircuts. As a result, her entire family has contracted the virus, and every one of them has AIDS. However, the girl's mother is the only one that dies, as the rest of them survive. Is this the type of situation we want to put our young people in? Where they can't get an HIV test because of an obsolete law? Do we want them to end up like this girl and have to live with the guilt and belief that she killed her mother? If the girl had access to HIV testing at the age of 16, her mother could have been saved. These kinds of situations are exactly why the age for access to HIV testing and services should be lowered to 16. To conclude, the Bahamas has made great strides in the fight against HIV and AIDS over the years. At the end of 2021, HIV prevalence stood around 1.3% of the population, and new HIV diagnoses decreased by 53% in the last 10 years. Due to our current laws, there is an at-risk population that may be significantly under-tested. Those between 16 and under-tested. Those between 16 and
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and judges. My name is Jadon Haley, and I'm a 10th grader at St. Augustine's College. How can the legal age to consent to sex be 16? What is illegal for 16-year-olds success testing to ensure he or she's HIV negative? The real cause of concern is the question: should the legal age to access HIV testing and services be lowered to the age of 16? I firmly believe that if we can't consent to sex, then we should consent to testing. The reasons for my beliefs are sexual assault victims, teen pregnancies, and a compromised future. In the Bahamas and across the world, it is being normalized for children to engage in sexual intercourse. Among the teenage community, having sex, or as they would say, how many bodies you have, is normalized as something to gloat or rave about. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 12 million girls between the ages of 15 and 19 give birth each year. Yes, it is true, a female is the one to carry and birth the child. But did she conceive alone? Of course not. For these young girls to become pregnant, they would have engaged in unprotected sexual intercourse with a male. This is imperative to consider because youths are engaging in sexual intercourse early. Therefore, they are exposed to possibly contracting HIV. Not only are the parents possibly exposed to HIV, but also the child. If the young parents are not aware of each other's status, the infection can possibly pass on to the fetus, and that by itself is a catastrophe waiting to happen. According to the Global HIV Program, the rate of transmission of HIV from mother living with the disease to a child during pregnancy, labor, delivery, or breastfeeding ranges from 15% to 45%. Thus, adolescent girls and boys should be allowed to access the necessary testing to ensure they and their child have not contracted the human immunodeficiency virus. On November 17, 2017, PACE Director Sonia Brown affirms about 700 teenagers get pregnant yearly. And up to 2018, testing was not mandatory, and if done, only after age 18. That was over 600 mothers who were not tested. Think about the repercussions, the babies lost, the children who could have been saved, the children who are now living with this, the hurt, the stigma, the health issues that could have been avoided if the mother were allowed testing. I reiterate, if we can consent to sex, then we should consent to testing. Thankfully, from 2019, the rate of transmission has decreased to 0% in the Bahamas because testing is now mandatory for all expecting mothers. According to the World Health Organization, sexual violence is widespread and particularly affects adolescent girls. Picture this scenario. Janae, a 16-year-old girl, is walking home from school when an older man, approximately 55 years old, raped her. Days later, Janae wants to get tested for HIV, but the only way she can do this is with her parents' permission. The problem is, she is trying to avoid telling her parents because she's afraid of how they will react or how society will react. What is Janae going to do? This may be the case for many young teens who experience sexual assault. They aren't allowed to access testing because they're still minors and the only way they can get tested is with their parents' consent. But they are afraid to tell their parents about their assault. It's already hard for these children that they must live with the fact that we were robbed of their youth and innocence. But now, if they are not tested or receive treatment for HIV, they will be forced to live with it. If this STD isn't treated, it can lead to AIDS. And if this goes untreated, it can lead to death. Aren't we failing these youths by making it inaccessible for them to receive the necessary testing for HIV because they're under 18 years old? Not lowering the age for testing is simply burying our heads in the clouds, hoping this problem is non-existent. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the word adolescent means a young person who is developing from a child into an adult. Let us think. As young adults, the movies you watch, the music you listen to, encouraged you to engage in sexual activity early. Imagine if your sexual activities at 16 negatively impacted your life now by finding out you're HIV positive. If you were tested earlier and received treatment early, wouldn't you have a better chance at life than finding out late? I believe the answer is yes. Getting tested as early as possible could have given the teen time to skillfully plan their life out around their new diagnosis. According to the HIV/AIDS progress in the Bahamas, in 2021, 94% of the people living in the Bahamas with HIV knew their status. 73% of them are on treatment. Let's explore the age of 16. You are on the verge of making adult decisions, colleges, or even marriages. Adult decisions equate to adult responsibilities. So drop the age to 16 so we can have one less decision to worry about when planning our future. In conclusion, I strongly believe that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to 16. If the teen pregnancies are increasing, this shows how many youths are having unprotected sex and could possibly be exposed to contracting HIV. Sexual assault victims should be given the opportunity to test themselves without their parents. In order to plan a prosperous future, 16-year-olds should be allowed to test themselves. Thank you. Good evening, ladies.
She was only 16. Only 16. With an infected beau. Convinced with him to sleep. She got HIV because she was not armed to know. Judges, fellow presenters, ladies and gentlemen, good day. In a country where lawmakers give consent for teenagers to legally consent to sexual activity at 16, yet limits their ability to test themselves so that they can be aware of their own status before sharing it with others. The story of the 16-year-old has been and will continue to be
a sad, sad reality. Another sad reality is that our teenagers are being exploited by adults every day, and the various forms of media are promoting sexual intercourse among teenagers. For those reasons and more, I strongly agree that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to the age of 16 years. In the Bahamas, Chapter 99 of the Sexual Offense and Domestic Act states that the legal age of consent to have sexual intercourse with the opposite sex is 16. When the law was implemented, it was designed to prevent children and those in the early teens from being abused by mature people. However, today, teenagers have taken this law designed to protect them to perpetuate dangerous sexual behavior among themselves. Listen to these alarming statistics. According to the National Center for Health of Statistics, in 2019, 42% of teens between the ages of 15 and 19 had sex. Many are of the view that teenagers having an early sexual intercourse have a higher risk of sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. It is a stage in which they are subjected to constant changes in physical, psychological, and social development, and risk factors such as ignorance, lack of early sex education, and drug addiction. In addition, according to an article entitled Sexually Transmitted Diseases Treatment Guidelines 2015 by Kimberly Rockwoski, young women are more susceptible to HIV infection compared to older women, and there are a number of biological factors that have been promulgated to explain this age variability and vulnerability. For example, the immature cervix has a greater proportion of genital mucosa exposed to HIV that is highly susceptible to infection, and young women have relatively high levels of genital inflammation, which have consistently been reported to increase HIV acquisition risk. For many young, vulnerable teens, the nightmarish journey of HIV infection begins much earlier than 16. It begins with sexual assault from a trusted friend or family member infected with the virus. According to the National Institute, 60% of children 14 to 17 years of age revealed that they had been sexually victimized by adults, filled with self-hate and looking for legitimate affection in all the wrong places. Most of these teenagers who are exploited by adults have sex without any form of contraceptives, resulting in contraction of HIV, AIDS, and other sexually transmitted disease. Gone are the days when Lucy and Desi of I Loved You, Lucy slept in separate beds. Instead, television shows containing nudity and sexual scenes, such as Empire or Scandal, have become more commonplace. Perhaps it's not surprising, then, to hear that the amount of sexual content in the media has increased in the 21st century. Sexual intercourse is depicted or strongly implied in one of every 10 TV shows on TV. Teenagers watch 3 hours of television a day. In a Kaiser Family Foundation study, 76% of teens said that one reason young people have sex is because TV shows and movies make it seem normal for teens. Many may not agree that the legal age to access HIV testing and services should be lowered to the age of 16 years. They fear exploitation of these young and vulnerable teens. The sad reality, however, is that teenagers are being exploited every day. Knowing their HIV status would at least serve to them, giving them back some power to get proper treatment and possible to refrain from spreading it further. She is only 16, with big dreams to grow. With access to testing, she can decide which sexual partners to know.
Well, some creative and conscious contributions there. Judges, it is now up to you to make your decisions as to who the runner-ups and winner will be. In the meantime, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and after that time, we will actually announce the winners.
Good afternoon. My name is
Well, we're back. And before we move on with the presentations of and announcements of the winners, we have a special performance for you now from DJ Counselor.
Good evening, all. How's everyone doing? Or is it still afternoon? All right, sorry, good afternoon. I want to thank you for this invite. Let's give the Ministry of Health and AIDS Secretary a round of applause for this amazing high school speech competition, man. I remember my days being trained as a peer counselor at the with the AIDS Secretariat, so this was definitely great. I want to shout out to all of our guests here, and of course the Minister of Education. Give a round of applause here. And the famous Dr. Nakia Forbes, if we all know her, who brought us through the pandemic. Give her a round of applause. I want to publicly thank you for you and your team and the great work. And these amazing teens, man, give them a round of applause for their speeches. Trust me, it was hard. Our judges are there sweating. What to do? Is it a 7? Is it a 9? Should we make a number? Because you guys were just awesome, all right? And their parents in the back and supporters, give them a round of applause for me, please. Awesome. I got a song here by the name of True Friend. Anyone that's a true friend? True friend should be your parent. Yeah, I know some of y'all feel really weird about them sometimes, but you know, they've been here before. They've been 14 and 15 and 16, and they had to make the same decisions y'all made. You know what I mean? So, you know, having conversations with them from time to time is okay. Can I get amen? All right. In fact, they might be better friends than some of the, you know, some of your peers. Can I get amen? All right, so that's another plug in their parents, all right? All right, give me the song, That Blessed Love. Can I move from here or have to stay here? Give me your hands up right now. All those who have Jesus, their true friend, give me a little big wave. Blessed. This your boy, DJ Counselor. Big up me true friend. Me salute up me true friend. Give me a little wave, come on. Big up me true friend. Me salute my true friend. Big up me true friend. Me salute up me true friend. Big up me true friend. Me salute, listen. True friends and true people, righteous and not evil. Every time I don't feel good, they always been and just like they should. Hold my hands and pray. They never walked away. Through me ups and downs to stay. Through my thick and thin and listen. True friends closer than a brother. Love, love, love like a mother. No, never be a bother. In times when you need and you give in a borrow. In times of sorrow, here today and I leave tomorrow. To all my true friends. Give me the wave, won't you sing with me if you know the song? Come on. Big up me true friends. And me salute up me true friends. Big up me true friends. Me salute my true friends. I think that's my time. Or we had a little technical problem. Big up to DJ Pastor Keith in the back. All right. You good? Awesome. Thank you guys for your time and this invite. Enjoy the rest of the day. God bless.
Thank you, DJ Counselor. Thank you for continuing to give positive messages to our people in general, but especially to our young people. Judges, are we ready? Do we have the winners? We're going to double check. Double check. I tell you. Count it again, huh? You know, I must say it's always good to do this, and it's always good because it really does start with the young people, particularly if we're going to protect the future of our country, because you are the future. It sounds cliche, but it is absolutely true. And I was really quite proud to see how aware you were of the issues and making sure that you are taking steps to protect yourselves as well. But the law, we'll see. We have a wonderful cabinet minister here who I'm sure has taken quite a bit of it in herself. Yes. Great. Wonderful, yes. I'm wondering if I can ask the Honorable Minister to do the presentations, please. We'd love to have her participate in this. Why don't you come right here? Well, Minister, I wanted to actually to make the real big presentations too, but you can have a seat for a few moments until that happens. So, if some of you young people would like to tell us what your experiences were like in preparing for this. Go ahead, please. Okay, I think they want you to come up so we can make sure we get the right audio. This is actually being recorded for television to play back on TV, so.
So trying to get together materials and content and trying to make the speech sound effective, I'll admit, not easy. And I was kind of nervous preparing for it as well as like in recording the video. In all honesty, though, I'd say it's been a really learning experience for me personally, and to think about what was being said, what we had to talk about. It was almost like, well, this is the way that I get to shape my country, hopefully, and who knows, maybe some lawmakers in the future, hopefully in the very near future, can put what all of us have put together into an actual piece of legislation to say, yes, 16 years, age of consent, age of HIV testing and access.
That's great. Anyone else wants to share their experience? I saw some of you doing some interesting things as far as editing in those presentations as well. Very good. A lot of work, hard work went into that. Anyone else wants to say something? Nope. Not one of the young women? Please.
I would like to say, firstly, that I am grateful for the Ministry of Health for providing each and every one of us this opportunity to be here and express our ideas. I would like to say it's also a great experience, a great learning experience to help better our country and be agents of change. I would also like to say that the process getting here was not easy, but nothing good comes easy. So thank you once again for this opportunity.
Thank you. That's great. It looks like they're still tabulating over there. Should we take a 5-minute break, and then afterwards we'll be able to actually make the announcements? Well, we now actually have the winners. And I'll tell you what the little delay was, that there's a tie, not at the top end, at the third place level. But if I could ask the Honorable Glennis Hannah Martin to come to present these main awards, please. Now, the third place winners will each get $100. In third place, there's Tisha Johnson. Also in third place, Jaden Haley, or Jadon Haley. In second place, getting a tablet. You want me to say the schools as well? Okay, sorry. You didn't put, okay, I got to look for that. In second place, getting a tablet from C.I. Gibson High School is Darvinet Hanna. Of course, Tisha Johnson was from Windsor Preparatory School, and Jadon Haley from St. Augustine's College. And there must be something in the air about St. Augustine's College, because the winner is also from St. Augustine's College, winning a laptop, Andre Rule. Now, obviously, St. Augustine's are big winners here today, and the school trophy goes to St. Augustine's College. Mrs. Paula Boleg will present that. You're calling the minister again? Okay. Sorry? I said it. We'll ask him to come up. Andre, Mr. Earl, come up, please. All I can say is that Spence Finlayson is going to be a really bragging man tomorrow, because he can't stop talking about SAC. But congratulations to all of you who got this far and participated in this competition. Some really good information that came out there. Minister, we thank you so much as well. But to give formal votes of thanks, Mr. Keith Kemp.
Good day. Yes, our wonderful judges. Thank you so much. I'm going to present them now. Oh, But I have to overrule that. Dr. Forbes, can you come to present our judges with their small tokens, please? Wonderful. They worked so hard. Miss Virginia Minnis. Come on, let's give her a round of applause. Barbara Dossett. Kayla Green Smith. Linda Clark. Kenny Mackey. And Mr. Kenny Mackey and Miss Linda Clark are both from Toastmasters, who helped us tremendously in getting our students prepared for our first round. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, Dr. Forbes. I want to congratulate all of our participants for a job well done. And I want to congratulate our winner, who was also the first place winner for our first round of competition. And our second place winner was also our second place winner for our second round of competition. I must admit, working with these young people, I've seen in them wonderful qualities to be wonderful members of parliaments and ministers and senators. These young people are well poised and well ready and equipped to do what is necessary in the future to help our country. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank all of you, families and friends and parents, who have worked with these young people, students and administrators, in preparing for this competition, both here in New Providence and in the Family Islands. I was pleased to see our participants in the Family Islands and also the number of males we had in this particular competition. I was well pleased. In the first round of the competition, Dr. Forbes mentioned it earlier, we had 56 videos to go through. It took the judges almost 9 hours to judge all of the videos in the first round of the competition. And you can go and watch the top 15 videos on our Facebook page, Bahamas National AIDS Program, and watch all the videos from today and in the first round on our Facebook page. I want to thank the Honorable Glennis Hannah Martin, Minister of Education and Technical and Vocational Training, for being here with us today. Thank you so much. I want to thank Lady Camille Barnett, President of the Bahamas AIDS Foundation, for being here with us today. Thank you so much, Lady Barnett. I want to thank our POWER representative for joining us today. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity of your busy schedule to be with us. I hope that the information that the young people quoted shows that the sites are a very powerful tool of information. Thank you so much. I want to thank the wonderful team here at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, all of the team who assisted us in preparing and getting everything together. Let's give them a round of applause. Ms. Taylor and the entire team worked hard. Mr. Virgil inside of our media department, who helped to record some of our videos and helps to do our broadcast with our kids, who appeared on the show with Ms. Lynette DeVoe, HIV What's Now. And they did a wonderful job. And that broadcast is also on our Facebook page. I want to thank our team, all the parents. I want to thank Ms. Carol Ashley, who assisted us. Let's give Ms. Ashley a round of applause. Healing Communicators, Toastmasters, thank them so much for helping us. The Garden of Eden Nursery. Oh, can't forget that. The Bahamas Information Services. I want to thank Mr. Minister and all of the team for Bahamas Information Services for their hard work, their dedication and commitment in ensuring that we broadcast this event live on both our Ministry of Health and Wellness Facebook page and Bahamas National HIV Facebook page. So all of the persons watching are watching us live today, and so we thank them. I want to thank the HIV Resorts Committee for their continued support of the Bahamas National AIDS Program, Funtime Events, Splash Party Rental, the Church of the Most Holy Trinity, and the wonderful, wonderful staff at the Bahamas National HIV/AIDS Program led by Dr. Nakia Forbes and our acting managing director, Nurse Beverly Boyd. Let's give them the round of applause. Now, it's no secret that I have a bias to my boss. She is a wonderful, energetic, innovative person who push and look for the best in everything. I want to thank her. I want to thank Nurse Boyd for allowing me the opportunity to lead this competition and to work with all of these amazing young people. Now, after today, the Facebook, the WhatsApp group will now be deleted. In the first WhatsApp group with over 60-something students, none of them will come with the group. But tonight, I will have to delete both groups. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you continue to do well, hope you continue to excel. It was a pleasure. I am proud to have worked with all of you young people. If I leave one word of encouragement to you today, it doesn't matter where you place in this competition today. Understand that all your contributions in this competition today is valuable, and no matter where you go in the world, always lend your voice for the better. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
That will conclude our program. Just want to remind you that December 1st is World AIDS Day. The theme, Equalize. And our goals, 95% to know their status, 95% of the population to get on treatment, and 95% to be virally suppressed. It's a target we can make.
Oh, so sorry. Before we dismiss this afternoon, I want all of the participants to come up, and we want to take a photo with all of our guests, special guests, and you, the participants. Before I go, I know how I missed that and forgot the wonderful prevention education team. How do I forget Miss Paula Boleg, my wonderful supervisor? And don't tell Dr. Forbes I say this, but she is the one who get me to do plenty of things I do every day. Don't let the fuck Dr. Forbes I say that though. All right? And my work wife, Miss Denise Major. She ain't made me no food today, but we'll get to that later. Let's give them a wonderful round of applause. The prevention education team is responsible for overseeing this event, and also the prevention education team is also responsible for our education within our public domain. And so we go into the schools, the churches, youth organizations doing HIV presentation, and also in corporate community doing HIV testing. And so if you're here today and you work in an organization, a school, a church, and you want to contact us to come in to talk to your young people with HIV and STIs, please give us a call. We'd be more than happy to come and work with you and your young people. Ms. Curry, Ms. Major, and myself, we work hard, and we love the job that we do, and we love impacting young people. So please give us a call. Thank you. Let's prepare for our photo. Rachel.